Welcome back. Let's add the drop-down ability to this profile icon. And luckily for us, if we go back to React Strap, which we used, and go to Components, that is nicely and easily done with the button drop-down. We see over here that we need a few elements, and I can even copy this entire piece of code. But let's go one by one. The first thing I want to do is I want to import some elements. Now let's space these out properly just so we can see them. That's better. And actually, now that I go back, we don't really want a button dropdown. We already have the button that is our avatar. That's going to be the dropdown. So let's actually grab a simple dropdown over here without worrying about the button. Again, I'm going to copy and paste this. And let's change that up. So you want to make sure that you use only what you need. In our case, looks like these 4 items is what we need. All right. And again, going back to here, we see that we need to have a state of dropdown open, which we actually have. We need to bind this event, and I'm going to talk about this in just a second. In case you haven't seen it before, don't worry, we're going to talk about it. And let's just copy for now this dropdown return component. I'm going to come down here and for now just plop it in right after or right before our icon. All right, the first thing we want to check out is the isOpen, which comes from this.state dropdown open, which we already have. And it also has a toggle function, which we're going to get back to. If we go down to dropdown toggle, we have a few options. And then our drop-down items, as you can see, we can have a drop-down menu with our items. Now, in our case, well, we have 2 items that we want. We want view profile and we want sign up. We don't need any disabled ones. We don't need to worry about header. And these are all things like this that have certain actions. We just want a normal, another action one, which is over here without any attributes. So let's just remove all the ones that we don't need and leave it at that. Now, if I just save this like that, I'm going to get a few errors. And one of the errors is going to be the fact that we're returning multiple things. Ideally, these are wrapped in something. So let's wrap it all because remember, with React, you want to return a single thing or an array of elements. So I'm just going to wrap it in a div tag. And with class name, I'm going to give it some styling that, again, I've tested out already. So this is padding of 4 and text center. Because this isn't necessarily a CSS course, I'm using tachyons just to simplify things and not spend too much time on CSS. So if you ever see me typing these PA4TC, these are tachyon classes, just automatically inject some nice CSS for us so those things look good. If you really want to know more about them, then you just go to tachyons and they have great documentation that you can use. All right, so this is now wrapped nicely in a div. All right, everything is working. If I go back now to my app, oh, we have bind of undefined. We haven't defined this toggle ability. And that's because, again, if we go back to React Strap, we have this toggle function. Again, we can just copy it. And the toggle function is very simple. It just sets state using the callback method. And this is just a way of anytime you update state, you want to make sure that if you're ever within the update set state function, you're touching the state because it can act in predictable ways. You want to have what we call a callback function where we make sure that we receive the previous state so that we can act upon it. in this case, we're just saying that drop down open, we want to toggle it. We want to just turn it to the opposite of what it currently is. We're doing it this way because set state or state updates aren't actually run immediately as they're called. So we want to make sure that in order to avoid any buggy errors, anytime we're using state for an update, we have this syntax of a callback function. And this bind here is happening, again, because of a little quirk where the this keyword kind of gets messed around. And another way of doing this, you'll see this in a lot of React projects, of using the bind to make sure that it binds to the component. But another way that I like doing it, that it's a lot cleaner, is to just use our arrow functions. And that's going to implicitly bind this for us. And it just looks cleaner. Let's save that and go back. All right. Look at that. We have our drop-down menu. That looks pretty nice, but that's not what we really want, right? We want to make sure that we can just click on the avatar and not have this drop-down thing. Well, luckily for us, if we go back to our React strap, if you scroll down, there is an area called custom drop-down content. And you see over here, I just created a custom content here, and it just does the drop-down. And it's very simple to implement. We just simply use the drop-down toggle and put the drop-down toggle inside of the drop-down toggle, whatever content we want. So I'm going to just copy this. And instead of the drop-down toggle over here, I'm going to paste this piece of code. And now this piece of code, we can just keep it the way it is. But instead of the custom drop-down content, we can perhaps insert our little icon that we have. So let's just grab the image, or we can use the div. Let's see what happens if we just add the div. Again, in our custom drop-down component, make sure everything's aligned nicely. Let's save. Go back to our app. The clicking is not working. What happened here? Well, let's go back. Well, the first thing that I notice here is that I'm using class instead of class name. And remember, we want to make sure that for React, we use class name. And I bet if we open up the terminal, and let's make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, it looks like property class, did you mean class name? So let's fix that. I also see that since we're using this div up here, we don't really need to do a padding. We want the image to be a little bit higher, and we can just remove the div. And again, for the class, make sure that we use class name. Let's go back, and again, let's make sure that everything is working and figure out why the drop-down toggle isn't working right now. Again, going back. And if we actually go over here, we'll see that we're doing something strange. If we go, we see that there's a toggle call on the dropdown, as well as a dropdown toggle that has an on-click. And if we actually console log here, what is happening, let's just say this is state, this.state.dropdown open, and I go back. Let's open up the console. And I click once, I get this called twice. And this is a really funny thing with their documentation. You see that for the custom dropdown content, they're actually doing the set state in the toggle function to just do the typical accessing the state inside of the set state function, which you actually don't want to do. And their workaround is to actually do this. But I recommend instead to just remove this onClick function because this is already happening. And in that case, if I go back and I click, this only happens once. and you see that, oh yeah, now our profile is working and we got a nice little toggle. How cool is that? That was nice and simple. Now, let's remove the logging. And you can experiment yourself to see how that works. Again, if you just put back the onClick and add the this.state.dropdown and just update the object, it'll work that way. But this is just a cleaner way of doing it. I recommend you do it this way as well. You can read up about using state inside of setState more on your own time. It's just a good practice to have. All right, we have the dropdown functionality, but the styling is kind of off. So let's just fix that. So instead of having it all the way up here, it's a little bit lower. Maybe you have some see-throughness to it. Well, I have a few class name for us that we can use. In the class, or let's do drop-down menu, I can give it a class name, again, using tachyons. I'll say that it's going to be a transparent background. It's going to have a shadow. So gives it that 3D feel of 5. And then just to show you how it's done in case we wanted styling as well, we can also do, or we want it to have our own styles, I can just have a style attribute here, and let's just give it a margin top of 20 pixels. Again, just to bring it down a bit. And I want some transparency, so let's just say that we want background color. Let me just move this on a new line. There you go. That's a lot cleaner. And again, because this is JavaScript, we don't do the dash color like we do with CSS. It's camel case. And background color is going to be, let's just give it the full, or this has to be a string. We'll do an RGBA so we can have some transparency. And we'll do 255, 255, 255. So it's going to be white with 0.5 alpha, which is transparency. All right, let's save that and see if that works. Let's have a look. All right, look at that. That looks a lot better, doesn't it? Like I said, I kind of cheated with styling here. I've done it beforehand. I usually like to code live and debug with you as I go, but when it comes to styling, it's just one of those things that it's nice to have beforehand. You can play around and add your own styling as you want. But you know what? This is looking pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with how we have things. I think we need to add some functionality though, so that when we click, these things actually do something. And we'll do that in the next video. I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.